think one of my strengths is problem solving. And sometimes I think you think much better when you're kind of pushed to the edge of a cliff, when you're limited by options and something has to work. Suddenly your best ideas come to you. And so that's what I found with that. And yeah, just asking lots of questions from people who've done it has kind of saved me so many times, kind of going, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think about that? Do you think this might work?
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast, where we share stories of inventors who turn their idea into a product. Please visit our website at www.inventionstories.com. And now, from the Invention Stories podcast World Headquarters Studios in Morro Bay, California, is our host, Robert Baer.
Welcome to the Invention Stories podcast. I am your host, Robert Baer, and thank you for listening. You're listening to episode 10, to the second part of our three-part series with Ruth Amos and StairSteady. So let's get back to it. I wanted to ask you, how was the patent process? Because I'm not sure how it is over in the UK. It seems like most of the inventors that I speak with here in the United States, they think it takes too long. It costs way more than they expected. Did it take a long time? Did it cost what you thought? I mean, I guess you probably didn't have an idea when you were young, so.
I had no idea when we first started. And in fact, there's a number of patents on the product, and there are still patents. Bearing in mind that this was started being designed in 2006, we have only just got our Australian patent granted. We are currently seeking our American patent to be granted. We're just in final discussions. It's cost a fortune. I don't regret it because it's the cornerstone. You know, we licensed the product to Canada and America. Like, you know, there are key business decisions that we've made around it being patented, but it's expensive. One of the things that I recently realized as well is that patent renewals are really expensive. I don't know about in America, but in the UK, there's only a handful of companies that do patent renewals. And I realized that we were getting totally scammed. The amount of money we would pay to renew our patents were ridiculous. And luckily we found another company who were much more reasonably priced. But yeah, the cost of patenting is ridiculous. And obviously to get it done to the right level in enough countries, you have to have a patent lawyer. You know, we started off without a patent lawyer, but it's just too complicated. The actual, you know, if it was a much simpler process, I think people would be able to do it on their own. But because it's all within that legal jargon, and it's the one thing I joke about saying, for, you know, the amount of money that we've paid for our patents, I could have gone to university, trained to be a patent lawyer, and had a really good time while doing it. Like, it's cost a fortune. But yeah, I don't think I'd have lasted because it's so boring. But it's ridiculously expensive. And it is something that I wish would be much more simpler, because I think there's so many people who are put off or who get partway through the process and just can't fund it because it gets ridiculous.
So you're selling them, or you've licensed another company to sell them here in the US?
Yeah, so we have a company in Canada who sell them, and they are just starting to offer the product in the US as well. So it's kind of, it's kind of the beginning of that process in the US.
So what countries are you currently selling them in?
So we sell them in the UK, bits of Europe. We license to Canada, and obviously they're branching out into America as well at the moment. We're currently in discussions around Australia. And yeah, I think for me at the moment, that's a nice little start, as it was.
No, that's great. It just seems like there's so many households everywhere, especially here in the United States. I mean, I was Googling the UK total population, and it's like 64 million people. And here in the United States, we have 330 million. Heck, in California, we have 39 million just here. Seems like the market is huge, and I've never seen anything like it. Is there anything like it on the market?
So there was a few years ago a product that tried to do something similar in the UK market. To my knowledge, they're currently not selling that product. It was a manufacturer who decided to start making another product instead. There are other products that have tried to solve the problem, but in slightly different ways. And it's really interesting when you first apply for a patent, you get back kind of lots of different patents from people that have tried to do similar things or that they think might link to your patent. And it turns out that this is a problem that people have been trying to solve for a long time. And yeah, there are some people who are currently looking at doing this in different ways. But in a way, it's really sad that it's not more of an established market, because it would make smaller companies like ours give us a much easier job, if that makes sense. You know, the more well-known this sort of product becomes, the more likely people are to search for this sort of thing and find the right solution for them. So actually, it would do us a favor if there are a few more.
How did you decide upon a manufacturer, and is it the same manufacturer today as when you started?
It's not. When it first started, we had it manufactured in Sheffield, which is where I'm from. It's still manufactured in the UK, but it's now manufactured in Swansea. That decision was mainly just to do with some of the changes in the products and some of the other specialities that the companies had. I think manufacturing, for a lot of people, they find it really challenging. We were really, really lucky because Reg, who I mentioned in my TED talk, had a manufacturing company and was the first person to kind of help me through some of those really big questions that I had no idea about, which then made it easier when we were looking for other manufacturers, because I knew exactly what processes they need to be able to do. And, you know, we sat down with Reg and worked out how that would work. So, yeah, I think we've been very lucky with our manufacturing, but I know that for a lot of people, it can be just a really hard decision to work out how are we going to make this, where are we going to get this made. And for me, it's been really important that we keep it. The manufacturing for the UK is within the UK, and obviously in Canada, it's manufactured in Canada. So those sort of things I think are really important.
Okay, take us through a typical, I guess there's no typical, just a sample purchase from somebody. So somebody in like Northern England wants a StairSteady.
So depending where they are, they would be put in touch with one of our mobility dealers who sell the product. They would probably go out and do a survey, check it was suitable, and then give them a quote. Now, we have pricing for our standard unit. So if it was just a regular straight flight of stairs, the rail's usually around £495 plus VAT and fitting. Now, a lot of our users don't need VAT, and fitting tends to be around £150, £200. So we tried to, for our standard model, really standardise what people pay across the UK. For a long time, we would only sell direct to end users, but with some of the shifts in our manufacturing and quantities, we've been able to sell through mobility dealers. But yes, it's always been something I've been very keen to. I think the mobility industry is a place where sometimes people overpay and don't get good value for money. And so we wanted to be really clear about our pricing and explain why that happens, because there isn't a massive markup on the product. We think that people that need this product should be able to afford this product.
You know, they build a lot of these retirement communities like in Arizona here. I mean, entire 40,000 homes are built like that. And it seems like, you know, they're designed to be sold to 55s and olders, that this could be something that could be part of like the new construction project, and instead of having to take
that would be amazing. Lifelong accommodation, you know, keeping people in their homes for longer. We're really trying to get people to consider this option much earlier. People make decisions about their mobility and about like safety on the stairs almost till it's too late. It's once they've had a fall, it's once they've lost this mobility or whatever. And so we really do try to get people to think about this at a much earlier stage, because the more active you can keep, the more active you're going to stay. And actually stairs is a massive part of that.
Okay. Just in general, do you like selling? I mean, some inventors, some engineers, they're frightened of it. Is that something that you enjoy, or do you just enjoy it because you know the product so well and it's yours and you believe in it?
I think there is part of enjoying it and knowing it well and seeing the benefit that it has to people. So I enjoy that side of it. And yeah, I think it was just something I kind of realized quite early on I would have to do. I'd have to be able to explain the product and the benefits and why it worked and all the rest of it. So yeah, I don't know if I'm a particularly good salesperson or what, but I know about the product because I've watched it being made. I've chosen what materials are going to be used. I can explain to you the decision behind, why we use this particular weld on this part of the product, and why the hole in this bit of the product is a particular depth, and all those little things, because I've been involved at every stage. So I suppose, in some ways, that's where my passion comes from, kind of my knowledge of the product and seeing it really affect people's lives.
Well, I'd like to speak about failure. You mentioned in one of the videos, I watched all your YouTube videos. I always do all of my research.
All the ones that disappeared into the internet.
Well, you talked about something about the failure, how failure perceived in the UK versus the US. I mean, I failed miserably half my life, it seems like. And that's just fine. It seems like it's part. But you had mentioned that there's you're quick to be labeled a failure if you fail once in the UK. I just wanted to see where you got that from.
Yeah, I think things are slightly changing. The more I work with kind of primary schools and children, the more I realize that teachers are really keen to teach children about failure because it's important. But I do think that there is, a lot of times within the UK, if one of your business fails, then it can be a lot harder to get finance for the next one, or to get supporters around you, or, it's seen as a really negative thing that you failed, not the fact that you might have learned some amazing kind of things on the way. And when it comes to things like coming up with products and trying to solve problems, you have to fail, you have to get it wrong. You're never going to get those little things right first time. And actually, I think it's really important that we'll learn the value of failure, because I think it is, particularly with things like social media and how shiny it is, people tend to put the best things up there. Very rarely do you see people talking about the things that they failed at. But actually, it's the sort of thing that encourages people, because we all fail, don't we? And I think it's important that we accept that and talk about the things we've learned when we're doing that, because things don't work out the first time.
No, and you had mentioned that you had almost, your company, you had struggled and made some decisions that in hindsight you wouldn't have made. I mean, that makes sense to me. I wanted to ask you, throughout this process, has there been some obstacles other than maybe your age that has been difficult to overcome, and how did you overcome it? I mean, you certainly had to learn everything from A to Z. What was tough for you?
Yeah, I never studied business. I had no idea where to start, really. And I have been really lucky because I just tend to ask a lot of questions and I don't get it right at all. There are places and times where I've just thought that, looking back, why did I think that was the right decision? But I think one of my strengths is problem solving. And sometimes I think you think much better when you're kind of pushed to the edge of a cliff, when you're limited by options and something has to work. Suddenly your best ideas come to you. And so that's kind of what I found with that. And just asking lots of questions from people who've done it has kind of saved me so many times, kind of going, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think about that? Do you think this might work? And also, decisions that didn't work out a few years ago, actually trying them again a little bit kind of further down the line, sometimes they then work because you're in a different situation with a different way of solving that problem. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Technology changes and opportunity changes. Heck, just my ability to talk to you right now over this Skype wasn't available. Well, the internet really wasn't that much available when I was your age, so I certainly see that you've grown up with a completely unique set of tools that are just unbelievable at your...
I wouldn't be able to do this without technology. And I think, at times, yes, my age people have kind of been like, oh. And in fact, when I was younger, it was better because I was kind of a novelty. They were like, oh yeah, that's that kid that has that product. And then as I headed towards kind of mid-20s, it wasn't a novelty that I was like a teenager. It was like no one they just thought I was some young person in the industry, if that makes sense. So age has actually become worse the older I've got, in the sense of it being a bit of a barrier. But technology has helped me so much. I wouldn't be able to do half the things I can do now, because, you know, the fact that I can speak to you, the fact I can, you know, speak to I've had conversations with my Canadian distributor in my car over Skype because of 3G and because of the amount that would have cost to have a phone call for an hour to Canada a few years ago would have been ridiculous, but it cost me a little bit of data that I get a massive package of on my phone. Do you know what I mean? Like, the amount, you know, the way that you can send emails and get in touch with people. One of my businesses, Kids Invent Stuff, a business is run literally, I'm in Sheffield and my business partner Sean is a minimum 6 hours away driving in Cornwall. It's like opposite ends of the country, and yet we can regularly talk and Skype and arrange things and share documents over Dropbox. And yeah, I think there have been many things that have held me back, but technology has definitely allowed me to do more things than I could have ever imagined.
Does the city that you live in offer help to inventors, or does the UK or England, do you feel like they do enough, or do they actually help inventors, or is it really just too hard to compare because you don't know what to compare it to? But do you think there's something the governments could do to help inventors more there?
I think we're very lucky in the UK. We have certain kind of research and design tax credits. We have support. It's encouraged. Like you said, I don't really have anything to compare it to, but I felt very lucky. Where I'm based in the UK, we have some great manufacturing. We have some other great companies. We're connected really well with the transport system. So I do feel lucky to be placed where I am. But I think it can be hard because you want to get that balance right of having that support, but also too much hand-holding isn't good for someone who's inventive and creative. So it's a really hard one to get right. But yeah, I think we are lucky. We do have some help.
Okay. Futurefest 2016.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. And how was it?
So Futurefest is a event that is put on by Nesta, which is the UK's innovation charity. And they tend to put it on every 18 months. This year it was held in London at the Tobacco Docks, and it looked at the future of work, play, love, and thrive. So we're all kind of looking at the different ways that we live. And it was focusing on 10, 20, or 30 years into the future. And I was lucky enough to curate the future of work. So looking at how we would work 10, 20 years into the future. So it was a series of installations, of talks, of debates across a weekend in September, kind of exploring lots of things. So everything from AI, robotics, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, women in the future of work, looking at all sorts of different problems that we might be facing over the next kind of 10, 20, 30 years with technology, with the places that we might be working. So yeah, it was really fascinating, really fascinating. Do
they do that every year, or was that the first one? Or?
So it's every 18 months, but it tends to be around different topics. So they're always looking to the future, but it really does depend what the topic. So in the past, they've looked at specifically at robotics, they've looked at music, lots of different things. That was the first time that I was involved with Futurefest.
You've been listening to episode 10, the second part in a 3-part series, Ruth Amos and StairSteady. I want to thank Ruth Amos for being our guest today. More information can be found at www.stairsteady.net and at www.ruthamos.com. If you're an inventor and would like to be featured on Invention Stories podcast, have a suggestion on how we can make this podcast better, or would like to sponsor our show, please contact us at inventionstoriespodcast@gmail.com. We invite you to visit our website at www.inventionstories.com. Thank you very much for listening today, and please tell a friend.